Welcome everybody, Shaarq here. Today I wanna introduce my build for recently started Essence Hardcore League. The first days of a new league are basically almost self-found. Because of that fact, picking a totem build for start is always a good idea. For also being hipster, we choose stuff like the Hierophant Ascendancy, go for crit, take hybrid instead of CI, and using Dual Apep's rage wands. But let me explain, guys. For offense power we are using triple Bladefall Totems, based on physical and chaos damage. We also go for crit instead of non-crit or poison. The reason why I made this decision is relatively easy to explain. Poison is a debuff and scales with the initial hit. Spell Totem support gem, which we're gonna use in our setup, has a big disadvantage in terms of this initial hit potential. It does 35 to 26% less damage on level 20 to our linked Bladefall gem. With that fact, it isn't a good idea to combine poison mechanics with any kind of spell totem builds. The defensive concept of this build is the fact being a totem guy, have a large amount of EHP with hybrid and mind over matter keystones. Our main damage setup consists of Bladefall, Spell Totem, increased critical strikes, added chaos damage, conk effect, and void manipulation. Power charge generation happens with the common setup power charge on crit and orb of storms. For auras I use discipline to push my EHP and clarity for mana regen. The remaining setups are however optional, use whatever you want. I recommend leveling with a Firestone Flame Totem setup because of the fact we are not grabbing Ancestral Bond Keystone. If you really wanna push with totems as soon as possible, grab Ancestral Bond and refine it later after doing Cruel Lab. Skill tree progression is fairly simple. Head to life and damage nodes like Retribution, Discipline and Training, Amplify and Devotion at the beginning, but just hold a good balance between damage and life to get a smooth level experience. For leveling, ignore totem, crit and pure energy shield nodes as well. The link for the passive tree is in the description of this video below. The Ascendancy class of choice for this build is, as I mentioned before, the Hierophant. Here you need to pick up Pursuit of Faith and Ritual Awakening. After getting these two you can switch to Bladefall Totems. In Merciless Lab I picked up Divine Guidance for a slight version of MoM and some good amount of max mana, which fits in really well with the increased mana costs of Apep's Rage. For red maps and max defense you finally wanna get Sanctuary of Thought from Uberlab. After grabbing this you can also take Mind over Matter Keynote from passive tree. Congrats in this situation, guys, now you are a fortress. For the bandits you need to help Okonomer, kill them all in Cruel, and help Alira in Merciless. For your gear you primarily need to look for affixes such as elemental resistances, life, dexterity and energy shield on all your stuff, and additionally crit and crit multi on amulet and at least 25% movement speed on boots. To cover your dexterity requirements of your skills, try to get a bit of those attribute on the gear you craft or buy as well. Use melee arrows or facebreaker gloves for some additional amount of crit and crit multi. On the jewel sector we are flexible, but I highly recommend using a Spire of Stone and put it in socket of the Templar area. As for unique items, there's, as I mentioned in the beginning of the guide, one necessary item to make the build work. We are talking about Apep's Rage. Do I wield it for maximum damage, guys? I also strongly recommend saving currency up for Carcass check or high ES bar regalia with life roll. For Flask setup, in general it's nothing special. I'm using 2 instant life flasks, 1 Quicksilver, 1 per sword and finally a mana potion. After grabbing Sanctuary of Thought, Ascendancy replace Mana Flask for Aetheri's Promise Flask. You can also replace the Quicksilver for Aetheri's, it's up to you guys. Only make sure to get roles like removes bleeding and curses on your flasks, it's really essential. That's it boys, if you liked the video and want to see more, subscribe to the channel, really appreciate it.